Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be, and welcome to a post about academia and the literary industry. So it's about books. It's called Steal as Much as You Can. When I saw an October 2019 book by Natalie Ola entitled Steal as Much as You Can, How to Win the Culture Wars in the Age of Austerity, I first thought, nice title. Then I assumed that the book was encouraging people, privileged people, to get ahead by stealing as much as they can from the educated poor before their unique insights and perspectives fade back into the intellectual bottomland from which they came. These sorts of insights only bubble up in an overheated economy, and usually we just get the cold comfort of the establishment. I saw this title and I pictured such a tongue-in-cheek message that would be masked for those who are unable to read between the lines. And when reviewed by a chorus of privileged twits who liked the liberal window dressing, they would be blind to her true purpose, drawing attention to the very thing that can tip a civilized society into chaos, which is mass betrayal and the disillusion of the illusion of meritocracy. In an academic setting, I have seen this disillusion play out in several ways. For example, me, a mostly ignored postdoc, writes a white paper, a document that is published on the internet but not within a journal. It's a typical way of communicating with colleagues. And it was about an idea I was told was old and well understood. While submitting this white paper to a conference, I noticed that a young man from another larger laboratory had been given an invited talk on the exact same idea. And I met him at the conference where he was given an award for the idea, and I learned that he was publishing it in the leading journal in the field. He says, as he stands at my poster, which has the figure that I published first that is identical to the figure that he presents to everyone, I meet him there, and he says that this is just a coincidence and that he started writing about the idea right around the same time that my white paper was published, meaning right after that. And I got no support from anyone because I didn't have a lot of political clout, and nobody wants to embarrass anyone or spend their political capital to right the wrong. I mean, this young man was rather hardworking and promising after all, and I was just a woman who was probably going to quit to take care of my kids eventually. He made a good impression on those who fund the discipline. Looked like they'd be able to extract a lot of juice from him. And that's all they really care about. In another incident that I experienced, suppose that a well-educated non-elite gets frustrated with the futility of her academic career and quits. So she starts answering questions about her field on a message board like Quora, where a privileged young man from a top university who is looking for an angle for his thesis on galaxy dynamics discovers that many of the ideas the ex-academic writes about are not mainstream, and he can use them to make his thesis work look original. Since academics don't generally cite from outside of academia, and since Just about every idea under the sun has been written down by somebody, probably in the 1960s at some point. This guy will get credit for originating the ideas because there is sort of a cultural myopia in the field. Nobody remembers what anybody did 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. It's a factory, it's a mill. Students just get churned through and ground up and spit into data mining jobs. So these sorts of young people learn that they can take credit for these sorts of ideas, even though they know on some level that they have lifted them from someone else, like an ex-academic, somewhere off of the internet, somebody who looks like a crackpot and somebody easy to steal from, somebody who may not be what they seem and may have a very good overview of the discipline, which a student is typically not able to develop based on classwork, because the classwork is designed to focus you and not to allow you to see the connections between the different areas of your field. So these are my two stories from academia, but this sort of thing happens in the world of novel publishing or academic book publishing or even just any kind of publishing. And I learned this after my first novel was ripped off by not one, but two privileged young British people. And even just today, I saw another novel come out that had the same premise, and it was written by a more established author. So it usually takes about 2 years for a book to get through the system, and yeah, his book came out right on schedule. So it seems that anything you put on the internet, even if you're selling it, it will be stolen and repackaged, and you will not be able to profit from it. You also won't be able to profit from it if you try to get it published through official channels, since they are blocked off by gatekeepers who only allow a predetermined, pre-vetted set of people through. So they take care of their own. And if you are an outsider, the only thing you can do is blather on YouTube about whatever you feel like what I'm doing, and hope that somebody finds it entertaining. I mean, surely that can't be stolen. Then again, nowadays you can even steal a person's face and get them to say whatever you want them to say using these deep fakes. It's very creepy. I used to add a song or a filter to my YouTube videos so that it wouldn't be so easy for someone to automatically scrape my voice from my videos. But now I see that it would be easy for anyone to turn any of my videos into a deep fake and change what I say. But what I say really doesn't matter. I mean, I'm only getting 30 views on each video because I am not a pre-approved, pre-vetted voice. I have no fact checkers. I have no supervisors, so what I write or say is surely replete with mistakes. In fact, a cursory review of Natalie Ola's book would show that she obviously argues for the inverse of the thesis I anticipated. This is what a commenter said about her book. Natalie Ola grew up under New Labour and from working class roots made it to Oxford University, graduating just in time for the global financial crisis. She personifies one of the unexpected consequences of Tony Blair's push for education, education, education. The creation of a well-educated working and lower middle class on a fact-finding mission to understand the forces that had so far acted against it. Yeah, you can kind of see it once you study it for a while. Ola's book tracks the atrophying of culture in the last 20 years and details the many ways in which Blair's "we're all middle class now" has closed down opportunities for the working classes. She ends by detailing a manifesto for stealing this back by supporting new media outlets while doing the minimum possible to earn a wage from the old. It's in this bad old publishing industry that I'm starting to get really annoyed with. When I read this, I wondered, what exactly does she think that the upper class has that we can steal? It's not their ideas. I mean, they have nicer houses and clothes, but they're really not innovative thinkers. The real content producers are the educated poor from whom the upper class thought leaders steal without regard to the damage they do to the social fabric that protects them. They just see a bright and shiny thing and they take it because there's no way for someone like me to protect anything that I produce. This is the reason that I think Natalie Ola made her thesis deliberately absurd and inverted, making you read between the lines, as in a Sarah Silverman style academic spoof. I'd have to ask her to be sure, but I'm not a professional reporter and I don't have any paid fact checkers at my disposal. I am just one of the legions of unpaid content producers from whom those paid by the elites will steal without concern for consequences. Why do these legions of unpaid content producers exist? Why don't we just do something more lucrative with our time instead of producing content that will never bring us any benefit? I think the reason is that many of us have spent decades within academic cults in which we were trained to produce work with no concern for profit, and it is hard to break that habit. Not only that, we instinctively want to take part in the discussions that matter, even though we do not get credit for our contributions, and even though we know that there are sort of two separate but unequal tracks for people. For example, it's like a professional wrestling league and a fake wrestling league. The sorts of debates you see on the news media are like fake wrestling. Everybody's wearing crazy costumes, they're throwing each other around, but the real debates are happening one layer back, and none of us are getting to take part in those, even though we may be influencing them by speaking to YouTube. Maybe there's somebody who's listening who has some influence. Who knows? So in many ways, speaking out like this, it feels better than the deafening silence that is offered by a self-encrypted academic system that only rewards a tiny fraction of those who worship its power structures. And if you're actually smart and you look at the academic system and what it produces, you see a huge waste of time. You see that it's just designed to absorb your attention and prevent you from getting anywhere in your life. And if you really want to get somewhere in your life, you have to look at the world as a whole and chart a course, because academia, it ain't going to do it for you. I once met a woman who viewed the educational system as a great march up the side of a volcano from which no one ever returns. The best of the best foreign students study hard and are admitted to study at top graduate programs abroad, but then they fall or are thrown into the volcano if they climb too far up the mountain. I mean, we see some obvious figureheads who are placed in strategic places to motivate everyone, but, the sides of the mountain are steep. This thought has caused me to switch gears and begin thinking about things in a fictional context. It's like a safe space for exploring ideas that about how the world works. In contrast to the black and white categories of academic work, it is easier to depict things in shades of gray through the medium of fiction. What if The Lord of the Rings were rewritten such that the ring was a person, a young woman perhaps, and Frodo was tasked with throwing that woman into Mount Doom? It would certainly add a layer of complexity to the story, especially if everyone except for Frodo has been convinced that she is a very bad person, when in reality she's just a bored housewife. The protagonist of the novel I'm working on is being hunted by a dangerous inquisition that wants to throw her into a metaphorical volcano, and she doesn't know it. Those who do know it try to change her course so that they don't have to watch another innocent person die. When one of her friends believes she is killed, he is haunted by her death, and he doesn't know that her death was faked. The character without a name in this story is chaos. If the protagonist disrupted the system to the point that it fractured or exploded, the world would devolve into chaos. People would rally around their families with a pocket full of shells. This is a lyric from Rage Against the Machine. This is not a world I would like to live in, and it's not a world anyone wants to live in. So, in my story, these inquisitors who protect the system, they were created to prevent chaos agents like the Joker from the Batman franchise from dealing with their mommy and daddy issues by hurting others. But overfunded and undersupervised, these inquisitors lost track of their purpose and lashed out at anything remotely suspicious. Whereas everyone else in the world who is on the other side of the veil, who only gets fed this sort of fake news facade, we've all been fed illusions about history, science, and politics. These inquisitors know that these are all just synthetic constructions used to engineer peace, while the reality is that there is far more that is unknown than is acknowledged. When a potential inquisitor first learns that everything he's ever learned is fake news, if his mind snaps, he must be killed. Those who maintain sanity after having glimpsed the unknown become inquisitors, men who had watched all of their heroes die. These are the men who threaten Mrs. Randall's life, the protagonist's life, yet they all view themselves as Frodo, delivering her up as a necessary sacrifice to the volcano god. There is also, of course, a love story in this tale of a crumbling world. So I've got to get back to work on that. The rigid attitude about maintaining the status quo in this story leads to pressure in the system that gets released when the volcano erupts. The volcano never cared about how many people were thrown into it. It was driven by plate tectonics, sunspots, and Schumann resonances. I need to finish this story, but it's really hot here today. And the outline is getting more and more detailed. Each character has a backstory, but it feels like the main thing standing in the way of bringing it to life is sort of self-doubt, so it must still be missing something. Writing my first 2 novels was a lot easier. Another thing that keeps bugging me is watching the themes in my first novel get copied by other authors in ways that are just too suspicious to be coincidences. And so, this feeds into Natalie Ola's book about encouraging people to steal from the academic system and bring all of those ideas into the public domain. Basically decoding them, because they're kind of encrypted. There's an academic encryption, and then you decode those so that anyone can understand them, and that's what I do a lot of on Quora. And maybe that's against the rules. I don't know. Nobody's ever told me. So I'm kind of stuck in that. I'm behind the veil. I don't know what people who actually have power are thinking, but I see evidence everywhere I look of the sorts of decisions they're making and the ways that they're being twisted when they sell them to people. And if you have too much imagination, you're just crazy. If you channel that imagination into a fictional work, you're just creative. And I love kind of playing in that zone because it's so freeing and comforting. It's like exploring your blind spots and coming to terms with them so that they don't scare you. It makes the whole world much less scary when you encapsulate all of your fears about what's really going on in a fictional work. And I think that by producing that kind of work, it can help others deal with their own fears. So I feel like what I'm doing now is far more productive than what I was doing when I was stuck in the academic system, perseverating over physics issues. For those who are afraid that all of these academics who climb off of their hamster wheels are suddenly going to go crazy and break everything, I mean, the sorts of people who break things are the ones who did these riots in the US. It's not the academics. When we go crazy, we write books, we write novels, we write fun stories and help the body politic heal from all of the bad, scary things they've been pushing under the surface. When you don't heal those things, you get cults like QAnon. That's what you get. So I'd love to be on the inside of this system, but the gatekeepers, I think, are, in hyper alert mode, trying to control everything in ways that are not effective. But I'm patient and I'm just continuing to produce work and kind of amuse myself with the little thefts I continue to see. So I'll conclude this by singing a song about theft. A tisket, a tasket, a brown and yellow basket. I sent a letter to my mommy. On the way I dropped it. I dropped it. Yes, on the way I dropped it. A little girlie picked it up and put it in her pocket. She was trucking on down the avenue. Not a single thing to do. She went picking all around. When she spied it on the ground, she took it, my little yellow basket. And if she doesn't bring it back, I think that I will die. Was it green? No, 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 no. Was it blue? No, 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 no. Was it red? No, 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 no. Just a little yellow basket. A little yellow basket. Thank you for watching, and please check out my books and my blog and Quora profile and all that stuff. There's a ton of random content, or it's content that will change how you see things in a way that it'll be fun and healing.